tools and weapons. The previous interventions highlighted the serious challenges faced in the digital ecosystem, since cyberspace is predominantly operated. What is the role of the private sector and of key entrepreneurs in mitigating these risks?
Well, I think Peter's answer captured so much of this very well. I think it's fascinating for each of us. If you think about when you pull out a phone and you put it in the palm of your hand, you almost literally have access to all the world's information. But think about what it takes to deliver that information to you. Of course, it comes through a wireless signal to your phone, but ultimately that's an antenna that's connected by a fiber optic cable, in all probability to a data center that is full of tens of thousands of server computers. And all of that infrastructure, as you point out, is really owned and operated by companies, by tech companies that are part of the private sector. And I think that means two very important things for those of us who do operate in this world of technology. First, we have a huge responsibility to put in place protections and safeguards around security, around privacy, around online safety to address the kinds of problems that Peter was describing. And I think second, we need to do more than work by ourselves. We need to work together. This recipe of bringing governments together with civil society, NGOs, and business, tech companies, through initiatives like the Paris Call, for example, which now has more than 1,000 signatories to address the need for cybersecurity. I think that points us in some of the directions in which we need to head.
Since we are talking about digital futures and those who are going to be most implicated happen to be the young folks, and Brad, that is not you and me. So it's important to hear from them. So let me turn to Ms. Powell. First, let me congratulate her on being selected to speak on this panel by way of the Youth Media Expressions campaign organized by the UN and its partners. And thank you for joining us this evening, because a discussion about the future cannot be complete without having you with us. So let me pose a very simple, broad question to you. What concerns you most about cyber threats and online harms that we currently face in the digital environment?
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. Young people have to make a trade-off between accessing online homework assignments and their safety and well-being, and that's unacceptable. I'm concerned about a report by Digital Peace Now that cited 1 in 3 online users have had a personal account hacked. According to a report by UNICEF, 1 in 3 young people have been a victim of online bullying, and 1 in 5 have skipped school as a result of cyberbullying and violence. And most recently, UNICEF Executive Director Henrietta Fore stated that there are worrying signs online predators were taking advantage of the pandemic. And I quote, "There's a lot of grooming, a lot of sexting, a lot of trafficking." Young people should not have to succumb to the idea that online harm and cyber threats are simply the cost of global connectivity, because they don't have to be. But there's an even greater risk. The risk that young people will not get to reap the full benefits and opportunities technology presents because we are busy sewing the holes caused by the preventable risks of global connectivity. From car seats to TV advertising, every technological innovation has been accompanied by protections and regulations, with youth at the forefront of those considerations. In a world where a new child goes online every half second, it's time we bring proper regulations, security measures, and universal standards to the online world for young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowell. It was very apparent from the video that was aired before this panel began that there were 2 clear stories in the short, very short and very interesting campaign video. One was of hope and optimism. I think you heard the young express their belief that the digital can help them change the world. They wanted to change the world. And of course, there was also a certain degree of anxiety around the environment, the digital environment, and being protected. So thank you very much for your intervention. We go to topic 2 now, something that we heard in the previous session as well, on COVID-19 recovery and building back better digitally. Can we hope for a better digital future? And again, can we bring a degree of trust and reliance on digital technologies amongst those who use it? so that our futures it could be more resilient and safe. Let me go back to Her Excellency Epsie Campbell-Barr and ask you a question, Madam. What role has technology played in your country's pandemic response, and how has the importance of future generations played into this?
Thank you very much for the question. Costa Rica recognized its own challenge to bring the digital divide. 147,000 households remain disconnected from technology according to our data, meaning more than 215,000 students to be reached. At the same time, we have seen an increase in access to internet of minors during this last month, leaving children and adolescents exposed to various digital threats and crimes, including online sexual abuse and exploitation of children and adolescents. Our efforts are therefore dedicated to implement a response based on 3 pillars. First, access and connectivity. Second, education. And third, protection. First, we implement with the private sector the program Connected Homes to provide connection and device to families in situation of need. A project is to be announced with the support of UNICEF to bring connectivity to children and adolescents in target rural and peripheral areas. The government has introduced a bill to create the National Digital Literacy Program, a whole of government strategy that aims to achieve connectivity for all education centers, ensure that every student can make a safe use of technological device, connection and teaching materials, and create infrastructure for community connectivity. Furthermore, Costa Rica has also partnered with civil society organizations in spearheading important initiatives such as e-mentors program by Paniamor, an NGO, and supported by Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children, which aims to ensure child online protection as well and strengthen our efforts of inclusion for underserved families and children. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me come back to Peter. Peter, ICRC recently put out a joint letter on the topic of protecting healthcare from cyber attacks, especially amid the pandemic. Can you speak further to the human consequences of cyber attacks to healthcare facilities? And what do you feel should the international response be? What could we do as a community? What could we do as the private sector? What could we do as governments?
Thanks for the question again. As in my previous response, let me just highlight that our concern with attacks on health facilities is older than digital transformation. We have been worried over the last decades how these attacks have increased, how this has led to lack of response, health response in particularly vulnerable populations. And of course, we are today particularly worried to see that attacks have now entered the cyberspace. And cyber attacks have severely inhibited hospital infrastructure, health infrastructure from the Czech Republic to France, Spain, Thailand, United States, South Africa over the recent month have severely inhibited the capacity of these health facilities to respond to issues in the society, to health issues in the society. So when, very frankly, Brad and I started to talk about this issue, we were at the beginning more ambitious because we said we need to go beyond health facility. There is a bigger issue of disrespect of international humanitarian law in cyberspace. But we decided that health facilities were so strategic, so elementary, that we would probably gather more consensus around a broad alliance of private public figures, which would stand for the prohibition of health attacks through the cyberspace. And that's the reason why we issued that statement, why we gathered so many international leaders to join behind us, because we think it's the most elementary issue that those facilities and infrastructures and sectors which are the most protected in international humanitarian law should suddenly be the most frequently attacked. And we have to make it clear through political action, through concrete action and cooperation here again, that this is unacceptable and unlawful, and we need to mobilize and gather the international community to express itself. So it was a tactical limitation on a strategically important sector, which made us focus on the health facility because we know about the huge impact, but it's by far a broader issue that we should attack. And I think it's an iterative process in which we hope to get more support for all the different types of attacks on critical infrastructure that we are looking at today.
Thank you, Peter. Let me turn to Brad at this point. And Brad, Microsoft also signed this call. You have signed the ICRC letter. You have invested in creating foundations and initiatives for digital peace. How do you see your role as an institution, as a company, in helping build back better digitally post the pandemic?
Well, I think the first thing that's perhaps worth reflecting upon is that almost every crisis brings out both the best and the worst in humanity, and that has definitely been true of COVID-19. Think about the types of hospitals that Peter was describing. Literally, we have had individuals put their own health at risk to go to work at a hospital to take care of other people as a healthcare provider. That is the best of humanity. And at the same time, we've had other people, often from the comfort of their own home, unleash cyber attacks to try to bring the work going on in that hospital to a stop. And on some days in many countries, as you heard from that list, these people have succeeded. And I think most importantly, that is a message to all the rest of us, that it's up to us to stand up for and stand behind the people that are helping others. That's really what the ICRC has stood for since it was founded in the 1800s. So for a tech company like Microsoft, this has not been a difficult decision. We know we can do more, and hence we should, and we are. We're working not just to support the ICRC with this call, but working with hospitals, with the World Health Organization, with public health agencies around the world. And I think every person who is watching this has a role and a voice as a citizen. And I think this is a time for us to use our voice and ensure that the people in government hear us, because this is something not only for today, but as you point out, for every day after this pandemic ends. Digital infrastructure is fundamental to our lives. We have to secure it in order to keep people safe.
Thanks a lot, Brad. Let me pose a similar question to you, Ms. Bowell, since you are the most important voice on this panel. If you had one urgent request to make to world leaders, to business leaders, to institution leaders, many of them are here, what would that request be in terms of building back better digitally post-COVID-19?
Thank you for your question. Well, as a millennial, my offline and online worlds have been informally blended since childhood. But COVID-19 has demonstrated that the role digital networks play in both our lives and our economy can no longer be deemed as secondary or informal. Within a matter of days, these networks became the backbone of how we moved life forward, how we went to school, how we went to work, how we went to medical appointments. And it's become increasingly clear that the private sector, in many ways, has become our first line of defense in this new digital horizon, which means channels of communication and transparency and co-creation of rules and regulations between the private and public sector has never been so important. And most recently, the world had its first loss of life as a result of a cyber attack on a hospital in Germany, and it was the private sector we turned to for support. So if I had one urgent request to world leaders to build back better, it would be to build back together. a formal process to ensure that public sector interests are represented and accounted for in the decisions of the private sector, that international regulation and cooperation on cybersecurity and cyber warfare places the utmost importance on protecting healthcare facilities and systems, and the centering of human values in the development and deployment of cyber technologies.
Thank you. Let me move to the final topic for this evening, online harms and child safety. And I'm sorry, I'm saying it so casually this evening because I'm in New Delhi. It's somewhere else. But the final segment deals with online harms and child safety. I think something that we are all most concerned about. I think we have addressed the issue of role of trust and security in the digital future. We have looked at the broader digital environment and also some of the pervasive issues around development. I think protecting the future generations is perhaps the single most important task for all of us today. And let me again turn to Her Excellency from Costa Rica. Your country is a member of the We Protect Global Alliance to End Child Sexual Exploitation Online. How have your country and your partners' countries responded to this challenge of protecting young people and in particular children online?
Costa Rica joined the We Protect Global Alliance in 2016, under which the government presented the initiative Costa Rica Says No to Online Sexual and Exploitation of Girls, Boys, and Adolescents. This strategy has allowed so far enhanced coordination of public institutions, private actors, civil society, and the media to strengthen of the 9/11 emergency system, as well another comprehensive supporting measure for victims. In a context where mobile services are effective means for emergency service, we have developed an application with UNICEF that will allow 9/11 service to obtain location of the victim, document and classify information to ensure its effective transmission. The creation of a chatbot through artificial intelligence will support our authorities in characterizing, prioritizing cases, therefore specializing the service provided by public servants. The report of the first national survey, Kids Online Costa Rica, released last year, shows among other findings that boys and girls receive in general more abuse or situation of violence, both face-to-face and internet, than adolescents. On the other hand, while digital skills allow minors to identify better the risk, it seems that they may also expose them to more risk. This new data will serve to identify a specific challenge and to design and implement effective policies. Finally, it is of utmost importance to address and eradicate the experience of discrimination and exploitation in digital world, especially for girls and adolescents, including those who experience multiple and intersecting identities like sexual, ethnic, race, etc. We must make greater effort to provide the skills and abilities for life that will not only allow them to get professional outcome, but fulfill their potential of ideas, leadership, and faith towards a new reality based on inclusion, equality, and solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brad, let me turn to you this time first. The New York Times ran a series in 2019 about the issue of child sexual exploitation and abuse online. This series characterized the internet as being overrun with illegal material while pointing out to the deployment of inadequate resources across technology companies, government, and other stakeholders. Where do you think additional investments need to be made? Can we build capacities to respond to this menace fast enough?
Well, I think we need to build capacity and we need to do it quickly. I'd even start by noting an interesting connection between this question and your first question, because your first question was really about misinformation. And I think what the New York Times reminded us of, among other things, is that one of the best protections against misinformation is a traditional press that is not only free, but is healthy, is prosperous, and even vigorous. And frankly, what the New York Times did last year was remind us, all of us who work in the tech sector, including at Microsoft, that we need to do better. They, in effect, were holding us accountable. And I think that is good for the world. For me, as somebody who works at Microsoft, it was, frankly, a good lesson, because a decade ago, we pioneered a lot of the technology that improved the protection of children online. A technology called PhotoDNA, for example, that we then shared with the rest of the industry. But unfortunately, as the internet has evolved, as video has increasingly replaced photos, as we have live conversations, we have new threats to children. And so what we've realized is that first, as individual tech companies, we need to build stronger safeguards. We need to put more people in place in key positions to build more safeguards. Second, we need to do more together. This is a space where I think our industry does best when we collaborate rather than compete. Let's pool our resources and invest in more research and development together. And people are now focusing on that. But ultimately, this is another reminder that we need governments, we need NGOs, humanitarian organizations, and tech companies to work together. That's how we've traditionally made progress in this space. And I think we're seeing a renewed call for that. And that's a good thing, too.
Peter, let me ask you a question on the same subject. And let me let me break protocol and draw from one of the tweets you tweeted out just before this panel.